The most asked question on my template tutorials is, what do we do when we have several resources working on the same task? Well, today we will create a task list that allows for up to 5 resources working on the same task with a different percentage of allocation for each resource. But this is just the beginning. Our task list will also allow us to keep a neat visual on the status of the task and how many physical resources are involved on the task. We will also calculate the total resourcing percentage and, most importantly, the impact adding or removing resources will have on the duration of the task. We will add some safeguards to ensure that every resource has an allocated percentage and that we have a resource for each allocation percentage. Now, a selection area on the top of the screen there will allow you to focus on one resource to make sure that they are not overloaded. So you select the resource and the resource shows on a different color here. And also to narrow down our task list with only the active task. And by graying out the completed tasks, you can have a better idea. We will also have charts and stats for each resource. We will highlight how much work they have as a lead, which is the first resource showing there. Might be useful for some, but not mandatory. If you don't want to use that, you don't have to. And also the amount of work as a non-lead role and the total on top. The chart will also show us if there are tasks that are unallocated and the workload that is involved. Finally, we'll go through very quickly some basic charts that you have seen in my other videos, so I won't spend too much time on this. So before we start, if you find some of the concepts too advanced, feel free to check my free course here on YouTube on the basics of Excel. Now let's get right into it, as they say on YouTube. Welcome to this tutorial. The first thing we want to do is to build a table. So if you want to follow along with me, which is recommended of course, I'm starting on E11, so this way when I refer to columns, you'll be able to follow with me. I have 3 main groups in this table. The first one is the task details that goes under 3 columns. The second one will be the stats, which will be calculated formulas. And the last one will be the resource allocation. The reason why I've put the resource allocation here is can be quite long, it's quite wide, there's 5 resources possible. And therefore, it wouldn't sit well in the middle of the dashboard. So this way you can occult them if you want to. Now, the first component, the task details, it's very simple. You just put a task name here, task name, and you would put a workload. The workload can be days, hours, seconds, whatever. And completed, you just put a percentage here. So I just put 10% here. So this is for the first component. Then we will look at those later on. So we have 3 columns for the completion flag. We have 1 column for the resources involved. So that doesn't mean the total resourcing, but it's actually physical resources involved. So if someone is involved just with a 10% allocation, he or she will show here. The total resourcing, that will be the total amount of resourcing that I was just mentioning as far as percentage is concerned. If this is not clear, it will be clearer when we go through the numbers. And the workload left, so this will be based on the completion here. So we can actually do it straight away. For that part, workload left is 1, which is 100% minus 10. And we'll be multiplying this by the workload. So we can see there's a 10% down, so there's 18 left. And so we look at the others when we have done the resource allocation. So this is the last part, the resource allocation. So the first question to ask ourselves when we have resource allocation is, how does having 2 resources on the task impact the duration? The workload is not impacted, it's always the same, but how does that impact duration? Do we assume that they all work in parallel and then the workload would be the same? Or do we want to reduce the duration because there's more people on it? So I imagine at the end of the day, I will probably have a flag to decide. But for this exercise, I will just assume that all the resources are similar. Like a bunch of developers, a team of developers for instance, and then the more you have, the less time it will take to complete the task. So obviously, if you have different types of resource, like let's say project manager, business analyst, then it wouldn't really make sense. But in this instance, you would think that you would have a different task here. So for the purpose of this training, I will assume that all the resources are doing the same work, and therefore that would reduce the duration. So you can play with reallocating resources to reduce your time frames. Now for the resource, I'm creating another tab where I put a list of resources here. So if you want to do the same, this will avoid the typos and the like. So this way you can be sure that the resource they select is from that list. So if you don't know how it works, you just put data validation, and you click on data validation, and here you allow a list, and then you click on the source, and while clicked you go and fetch those. You don't take the first one, you take all the others, and I should be able to show you all this. So of note, you can leave blank, you can clear it, which is useful when you don't want to put any resources, obviously. But here I just drag it along, and I'm just going to copy it and put it in front of every resources type here. So I have the first one as a lead resource or as a main resource, but you can just put any types of resources here that you like, obviously. So there's no discrimination. And then you will be able to select your resources here. Now the allocation, I want to do the same. For the allocation, I don't want people to start typing 45%, 32%, something crazy like this. So I'm just going to control a little bit what they input. And I'm going to start with 100%, assuming this will be the most used. And I'm just going to do a 10% decrease. So, and I'm going to use the power of Excel with the autofill. So you select those two, and you drag it down until 10%. So I don't want 0%. So here I'm doing the same. I'm just going to do a data validation. Data validation. I'm going to select a list. I'm going to click on a source, and I'm going to go here. And this time I'm going to select this part here. I'm going to click enter. And here I'm going to drag this down, checking first if it works, obviously. So 100% at top, perfect. I'm just going to copy this across the allocation. Okay, so now I'm just going to input some dummy tasks so that we can start working on the overall look and feel, and we have some data to play with. That's it. Now I've added some dummy data here, so it makes more sense when we go through the calculations. So now maybe it's time to go into the dark mode, the dark side of this. The first thing to check is you go under page layout and you check the colors. What I would like to do is to go back to this old version of Office, the 2.13 and 2.22. Now we are currently on the Office version with nothing else, so I think it's Office 365. So I just want to go there just because there's a blue that I like, and I used to use, but now with the new page layout I cannot access it, so I just go back to the old page layout. And once done, we go under the Home tab, and we go under the styles, and we right click on normal style, and we want to modify it. And once we are in the format, we click on format here. What I want is to select this blue here, the blue, color blue. So they are sometimes turquoise or the likes, but this one is actually called blue. And I'm taking the darkest one. And then I'm just going to the font, and I want a font white. I'm going to the borders, and I put a white border, but that doesn't always work, but I do it just to say that I've done it. And then when I press OK, it's there. So this really didn't really work. The border side, I'm just going to put none here. So that's it, that's removed. It put white borders everywhere with the exception of where I wanted them to be. Not bad. So, okay, so here I'm going to have to do it manually. I'm selecting my table. I'm going under more borders. I'm selecting the white, and I'm putting outline and inside, and that should give me this. So here it just, this must be a problem that occurred during my copy and paste when I copied the dummy data. So here you go. What I like to do, just a little bit of cleanup. I want to increase this, and I'm going to do it to put it in wrap text, just in case some are a bit too long. For instance, these three here, I would like to have them the same width. I'm going to put that in bold, and I'm also going to put it in a slightly less dark font, this one. Okay, so now for those three, I would like to merge them. So if I merge them this way, that's one way to do it. And then I'm just going to go to the darkest of the, what's the name of this color here, of the orange. And I'm going to do exactly the same here. And I'm going to merge. And the reason why I want those in different colors is just to confirm the fact that those are to be manually input, and the one in the center here that we're just about to see, they are calculated. So I'm doing a merge here as well. So you want to give a little bit more space, center, done. Okay, so we are making progress. Now it's time to work our way through the calculated cells here. So here I'm just going to do the same trick. I'm just going to do a merge and center, and I'm going to put it at the center here. Maybe if we put everything at the center. The completion flag, what I want to put here, I want them to look like squares, so I'm just going to bring them a little bit closer together so they look a little bit like squares. And I want to have this one color when the task is not completed, this one another color when the task is in progress, and this one a different color when the task is completed. Okay, and I want to use different shades of this orange color here. So I'm going to go from dark to even darker here. So let's do I'm just going to give it a little bit more room so the completion here can fit in. Okay, I'm starting with the first column here. Then we go under conditional formatting. And the way I see conditional formatting is you need to go from top to bottom until you see something that is satisfactory. So this is the simplest, might as well use if they are done through, it's better to do it through the Excel way. So can you use this? The problem is we are using a different column. So if you go down, no, this is not going to work. And then you press new rule and you also go from top to bottom. Is this going to work cells based on their values? No. So the last resort is to use the last one, the formula. But it's good exercise to review and see, check, can you use any of those? And we'll see later on that we can use some of those, and it's quite handy. Now, as I'm referring to a different cell, I'm going to have to use the formula. So the cell that I'm referring to is this one here. But so we click on it. We click on the first one. I know I've selected all the columns, but I just click on the first one. But I want to make sure that there's a dollar in front of the G, so that I can use it along. So just, well, actually, I don't even need the dollar in front of the G because I'm going to use it just for this column here. So I'm just going to put G13 is equal to, I need to add two conditions here, just in case there is no task. There is no task and there is a 0. I don't want to highlight this. So the first condition is that we want this completion to be 0. And the second condition, what is it? There's a choice. I'm just going to put the task itself is not blank. And what do we do when this occurs? When this occurs, we take a we take the orange here at the top, or any color of your choice. So here we have this color here in this column when the percentage is 0. Now, if I clear this, it's removing it, which is fine, which is what I want, because you would have, for instance, here, that's it. It would know when there's no task. So let me just undo all this. So when there's no task, we don't want this to be bright. I'm going to do the same with this conditional formatting. New rule. So we already established that we need a formula, so we can go straight here. And here I'm just going to put also, I'm not going to forget this time, the AND condition, because we need two conditions. We don't have to worry about this, because if there's a percentage, we assume there is a task. There's only so much you can check. We assume the users know what they're doing. And then, okay, so here this has to be greater than 0. And this has to be smaller than 1. So 1 in 100% is 100%. And what do? We go back here, fill, and we take a slightly darker color. This is not the bottom one, the one just above the bottom one. And then we press OK, and it seems to be working. So what do we have? 80/50, yes. So we just left with 100%. And we select all this. And then here, what do? We just go under conditional formatting again. Who would have thought? And we go into using a formula. And here it's the simplest of all, because we're only checking that the completion is equal to 1. And we don't need to make sure we unlock all that. Is equal to 100%. And then we put the darkest value. And we'll see later on I have an option to dark out all the completed tasks if required. So kaboom, done. Now, if we move along here, this is where we really notice that I've calculated that before, so I'm just going to drag it down. And when we have this, we don't want 0 here, for instance. We can just simply, in this case, do a format cells and go under number, custom, and we just want to remove all the blank. We just put a semicolon twice. So when there's a 0, it just put blank. Let's go back here. So here I want to use the power of Excel once again using the repeat function. The repeat function is a great function. And this is where you repeat a text. And here I'm just going to put X for the time being. And after we can look at adding something a little bit more meaningful. And how often do I want to repeat this? I want to repeat this as long as I find resources in this. So for instance, here there's 4 resources. I want to show 4 X's. It's a way to quickly, for the users to quickly see how many resources are working on this. So I'm just going to do a countif within this. So I'm just going to do a countif. I'm going to count how many cells here are greater than 0. So this is the one that I checked. And here the condition is greater than 0. And there's always something missing. It's part of the... So what do we have here? Countif greater than 0. And I add another. Okay. All right, so here, if I drag that down, let's just check if it works or not. So here I have 4, it counts 4. Here I have none, it counts none. So it seems to be working. Now, can we put something a bit more exciting than those? Now, I'm just going to put my cursor here. I'm going under Insert, and I'm going to try and find a symbol that represents a person here. So you go under the 𝐻𝐵𝐷 font, and you should be finding this symbol here. So you can, you could put this one if you preferred, but I'm just going to insert it. Okay. So the thing is put this, if you look here, it's put this cell as 𝐻𝐵𝐷s. All the others are aptos narrow. That makes sense. So what I want to do is I want to, instead of the X, I want to use this symbol. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm just going to select the symbol and I'm just going to copy it. And then I'll come back here and I'm going to replace the X with the symbol here. So that still doesn't show you much, but that's because we haven't yet put the 𝐻𝐵𝐷s font for this. And here it is. Now I can delete this. And then you want to put that on the left-hand side so it's easier to see. Okay. So if we put that big, I think that's gonna, yes. All right, so this is done. Resources involved, you quickly see how many resources are working. I'm just gonna reiterate the fact that there are 4 resources involved, but if one is working only 10%, for instance, it's still gonna stay at 4. It's the number of bodies, if we can put it this way, that are working here. Now the total resourcing, and this is be different than this, and maybe we'll, if you haven't understood the concept yet, it might be clearer here. So you just add all the allocation percentage here. So allocation percentage plus this, plus that, and this. So here you have 390. Now, regardless, depending, you might prefer to have just a standard number than a percentage, but I like the percentage, so I'm going to leave the percentage. And we are noticing that there is 0% here when it should be. So I'm just going to do a right click, format cells, and I'm going to do as before. I'm going to add 2 semicolons. So the 2 semicolons, if you don't know how it works, this is what's on the left of the semicolon tells me how to present the data when there is a positive value. The one in the middle, I believe, is for negative, and the one at the end is for 0. So we say just, when it's 0, you do nothing. And then this is what it does. So it just removes the 0 here. So the workload we've calculated before, as a reminder, we just remove the completion from 100% and multiply it by the workload here that we can put in the center this way. Now the duration left. Now this is the part where I was mentioning before. So we have a workload here. We have a total workload of 20, let's say days, 20 days. And we have all this bunch of people working on. So you want to have this amount of resource impacting the duration. If there was only one person, it would take you 20 days. But now you have all this, so how long is it going to take me? And this is what we will be calculating now. So in order to do this, we need to divide the estimate left by the total resourcing. Now, remember, we're talking about the workload left, not the total. That's gone. There's nothing we can do. If you have actuals, you can track the actuals, but we are looking ahead. We are looking forward. That's the only thing we can do. We have estimates. We need to work with that. So we're just going to do the duration left calculation, which is very easy. It's just a matter of dividing this number by the amount of resourcing that we have. Not by the amount of resources, but by the amount of resourcing that we have. And as soon as you hear about dividing, you need to be mindful that Excel, like a lot of us, don't like division by 0. So in other words, you need to either check if the cell is 0, if the cell that you divide by is 0, or you can use an if error. So I'm just going to show you the if error because this is something that people don't often use. So I thought maybe if you don't know about it, you can use it. Now the trickiest part is to spell it properly, as you've seen. So if error, it's very straightforward. You write if error first, and after you do the calculation that you wanted to do. So you anticipate in a way that there will be an error. So if error, and what did I want to do? I wanted to divide the workload by the total resourcing. And what do I do when there is an error? This is what the formula wants you to do. They want you to put a value if 0, and I'm just going to put 0 here. I'm not going to put a message because I could mess things up. So we have this. Okay, I'm just going to remove all this. Well, I'm going to leave one. Mr. Generous. So we're going to, drag all that down. So we can see already that there is those zeros that we don't want to see. And you might enjoy zeros, but if you do, just leave it. But I'm just going to do the semicolon here, and I'm going to remove it. Now, let's just demonstrate how that works. Now, let's say we only have one resource here. when you have one resource, so it will take you 20 days to complete. There's 20 days workload, 20 days to complete. Now, if we add another resource to this at 100%, it only takes 10 days because, once again, assuming everybody knows how to do the work, and if that other resource only there for 50%, it would take 13.3 days. So this guy will be working full-time, and she will be working only part-time, but they will both finish at the same time. This is, once again, theoretical ideal world, but that's all we can do for estimates, right? Okay, so total resourcing here is blank. We don't have any resourcing, which is fair enough. So we'll have a look at this. Actually, let's have a look at this right now. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. We can move to the next part. So you might even want to remove the. It might be a bit more presentable without the dots here. Now let's do a little bit of, we said before that we cannot fully control what the user can put. The user can put something silly, not put a task name and put a percentage and like that and the likes, but you cannot just control too much. But what I would like to make users aware of is when there is an allocation percentage without a resource, because that would mess things up. And that would change the duration left without anyone involved. So I just want to do some basic formatting on this to alert people that there is a problem in this. So I'm just going to do a new rule again. So we know we're going to have to go to a formula because it's a different cell. So I'm just going to go to a different cell and I'm going to check a couple of things. And I'm going to start with AND because it's a couple of things. So the first thing I'm going to check is if the cell we are on is equal to blank. And the second condition is the allocation is greater than 0. So there is something wrong here when this occurs. And I'm just going to go under the format here, and I'm just going to put a different one. I'm just going to take this one, which is at the yellow. I think it's gold. It doesn't tell me there, but let's see. Assume it's gold in more ways than one. So I just don't take the last one. I take the before last one. I think it goes well. Okay, so we have formatted this. So the scenario was I don't have resource here. So this is showing me in a little bit of a subtle way that something needs to be input here. So if I select all this and I double click on the format painter, I should be able to happily apply it to all my resourcing. And I'm just going to do some basic checking here. Let's say I don't have a resource here, so that seems to be working. Obviously, so now I'm pressing the control key and all the resourcing to make sure they are all more or less the same length. Okay. So this is the first thing that we check. The other thing that we check that I don't want to see is the other way around, when there's a resource here and there is no allocation percentage. So I don't want users to assume that because there is nothing here, this is 100% allocation. This is just simply not true. We want people to put the allocation here. So I'll be selecting this, and it's more or less the other way around. Conditional formatting new rule, use a formula, and I'm just going to have two conditions as well. The first condition is that there is a resource. This is not blank. The second condition is this is blank. Remember, we don't allow 0, so that has to be blank. And debatable, but I'm going to use the same color here. Could use a different color. Let's see how we progress. So let's see. So this is working here. This is working here. Now, same trick. I'm just going to select that column. I'm just going to double click on the format painter. And sometimes it's does it all the way down, so it does it this time, so that works. So I just press on the first one and it just does it all the way down because I've selected all this to start with. And this is looking good. Alright, so there's another thing that I could do just to alert people. I'm just going to remove some of those. To alert people of the fact that there are some that are at less than 100%. I'm going to do a very subtle grading. So here, when we go back here and we go down and we see the color scale, and this is what I say, it's better to use the one from the top. So here I'm going to use this, but it usually gives you some dreadful colors, point in case here. So I'm just going to go to the manage rules. And I'm just going to do it my way here. I'm just going to change this a little bit. I'm going to use only a 2-color scale. First thing to do is to not let Excel decide what is a low value, what is a high value. You want to decide. So I'm just selecting a number here, and I'm going to put 0. And I'm going to put a number here, and I'm going to put 1. So 0 is 0%, 1 is 100%. So well done, Ben. 1 is 100%. So what I want to do is, when it's 100%, I want to say it's normal. So I want to put the dark blue that I had before. And when it's 0, I want to use the same type of blue, but less strong. How less strong, we'll see. Okay, so here, I'm just going to check with this first. That's okay. There's already enough colors. I don't want to have too many colors. But here you see that you know that when you look at this, you realize that there are already 2 resources that are not fully allocated here. So as it was conditional formatting, same thing. I can double click on the format painter, and I'm just going to put it here and here and here and here. Just going to do some basic testing here, so that works. If I put 20%, does that follow? Yes. This is working. Yes. And this is working. Okay, so this is done for the basic formatting for this. We'll do some additional formatting when we come to the top of the screen. Okay, now we can do some basic totals in the end here. I'm just going to use the same format here for some of those, and after we can see which one match and which one don't. So the first thing I'd like to do is to calculate how many tasks we have. So there's a handy Excel function called the count A. How do they define it? Count the number of cells in a range that are not empty. Okay, so that's one way to put it. So the one that are not blank. So in other words, here I'm just, and there's only one parameter required. It's just this is what I like about this function. Just by doing a count A on this, we know there are 18 tasks. Okay, now what we want to do, the estimate workload at the beginning, we want to do a big AutoSum here. Not this one here. So we select this, AutoSum, and we select this, put that at the center, put all that at the center. And here completed, does that make sense to have the completed percentage? I don't think it makes sense. So I don't think this can be a very useful information. An average maybe, but even though, no, I'm just going to bypass it. I think this will be more interesting. This, how many orange we have. So unfortunately, we cannot do that without using macros and the like. So we're going to have to redo the counting here. So how do we want to do this? We need to count how many percentage here is equal to 0. So I'm just going to do a countif equal countif how many completion here is equal to 0. I'm just going to put 0 here. So 7, 7, 6, 7. So that seems to be working. So I'm just going to do format paint. And here I'm going to go here actually. I'm just going to lock this. I'm just going to press F4, F4. So that will allow me to copy this here. And when I click on this, we notice it's still taking the completed because I have locked it. I put dollar values here. And instead of 0, I'm just going to count 1, how many are completed. Okay, and the reason why I'm doing this is here I'm being a bit lazy. I don't want to do a COUNTIF with AND because here the way to calculate the tasks in progress is to have to count the numbers that are between 0 and 100%. But I don't want to have to go through this. So the only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the total of tasks and I'm going to deduct the completed and the not started. And here you go. So we have a total here of 18 tasks. Let's just check so we don't look too silly. Yes, 8, 3, 7. That seems to be working. So that's it. So here, resource involved doesn't make sense to add this. That's it. Total resourcing, yes, that makes more sense. So let's just see if we take this and we copy it here. So this is 18.5 total resourcing days. That is left, work days left. Okay, here that's work days left. So here this is workload left. So total resourcing here is a total resourcing involved. Does that make sense? I'm just going to go back to percentage. Not really sure that makes sense, but I'm going to leave it anyway. So this with the dashboard will look very fancy. And I'm just going to copy this here. Is bringing back all the rubbish of the comma. Okay. So this is it. I'm not going to bother doing any more totals here. I don't think there's much that makes sense. So this is it. Now we can go into some totals to start working on charts. Okay, now for each resource, for each occurrence here, I'm just going to calculate how much work is left for that very resource. So I'm just going to create another type of grid here, 2 cells away from the main one, say, and I'm going to do more borders, and I'm going to put some white borders. I'm going to actually copy so here I'm just going to copy, it's clear the lead main resource. I'm selecting the first resources. I'm going to also copy the format painter. So this will be for the first resource. So how do we know how much work that person will be carrying out of all the workload? So I'm going to add the if error later on, and I'm going to forget about the if error for the time being so that it's clear. I'm going to take the workload, I'm going to divide it by the total of resourcing that we have, and I'm going to multiply by the allocation of that resource. So here I'm doing a proportion, I'm calculating a prorata that this person will be working on. But before I press enter, I want to lock some of those so I can move this across. So what will not change for any of those? It will be those 2 columns. So therefore I need to lock them with a dollar in front. So I'm going to put a dollar in front of the M and in front of the L here. So this way I should be able to drag it down. The 13 will follow, and I will be able to drag it on the left for that resource. So that will jump here and here and here. So here we have those numbers again. But before I confirm with the if error, remember, as soon as there's the dividing, we need to be careful of the zeros. So let's take a simpler example here, 10%. Let's just drag all this down. So the div 0, so this is something that we knew already. Okay, so let's have a look. Let's just select, I mean, this one at 20, 0 completed. So the workload left is 20, and this one will carry 100%, and this one 50%. So if I just put the 100% here, the duration is 10. So here, we notice that this one will do 10, and this other one will do 10 as well. Now, if we just have, let's say, 50% on this one, and they will only do 67, and the other one will be doing the 13 because they will be working 100%. So that seems to be working. So I'm just going to do the if error here. If error, and I'm just going to put a 0 if there is an error. 0. Okay. All right. done it. Okay, so here I could do also format cells, but bear in mind that those numbers should not be seen, the numbers that should not be seen, because those will be work fields. I don't think you need to show them, but if you want to, you could always. So now I know that the next allocation will be 2 cells after, so instead of making my life too hard and trying to drag all this when everything's going to be a mess, I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to copy it into 2 cells farther. So this way, that's going to give me everything beautifully, and then resource 5 here. Okay. And we can merge all this, and we can give a bit of explanation, not to the users, but for yourself, I suppose, so you remember what you've done. I'm just going to put here, and so this is the work left per resource. Border, that's better. Work left per resource. So we have all this now. We just need to marry this with the resource name and do some totals. Okay, now let's calculate the total workload for each resource. So in order to do this, we can go back to that tab here where we have the resource names. Yes, I'm just going to make them look a little bit nicer. I'm just going to put some white borders. This I'm going to put it out of the way, and just I'm going to copy this just for fun. Format painter here, and I'm just going to copy it here like this way, and I'm going to drag all this, and I'm going to put it and this way. Now what I want to do is to calculate for each resource how much work left there is, and after I can do a total, and we'll know who's doing all the hard work. Now I'm just going to copy a format painter so it's all clear for you. So I'm going to have to do it one by one. I want to make it simple. I don't want to have a formula that will be too long and very hard to explain, so I just want to do it simpler. Now here I'm going to do a sum if. A sum if. So the first condition is the condition is that we want the name here. We want this name to be, and actually I need to lock it. I will lock it this time completely. I need this to be equal to the resource that I'm investigating, which is this one here. And when it is a yes, when it is okay, when I see Sam here, I need to retrieve this component here. So I'm just going to retrieve this component, which is AA13 to AA31, and I need to log this as well. I'm just going to lock it. I'm not going to do anything fancy. I will have a little bit of manual work to do, but that's okay. So here we have those dreadful stuff. I'm just going to copy a format from this format, and I'm just going to apply it here. Here I'm just going to add a not allocated resource, but the format, the formula will have to be different. I'm just going to copy here. We cannot just check this because I didn't create a resource called not allocated for good reasons. Instead, I'm going to check that it's equal to a blank. So we have 45 blank here. So here this one is blank, so therefore it's not allocated. So once again, all this seems to be like some extra work if we could assume that people do the right thing, but I think it could be worth it. So just want to put the same color here. Now if you want to do that the faster way, what you can do is you just free up the O, you free up the colon here, what I call freeing up the colon. You don't put a dollar in front of the O here. You don't put a dollar in front of the AA here. So that will allow you to copy this. Let me check here. No, good. What will allow me to copy this and put it at 2 cells on the right, 2 cells on the right, 2 cells on the right. And then let me check. There's no one here, so let's just check here. 𝗏𝗏𝐻 80%. Yes. And then you can just, if you want, put them all close together. That's probably a faster way to do it. Okay, so we have our resources here. Okay, we have the resources. We can do some tidy up later on. So what I want to do is to split up the lead resource with all the others. So I'm just going to duplicate this. Yes, I said the word duplication. It's all right. I'm happy with this. Everything that can make things simpler, I'm happy to duplicate. So, and I'm just going to apply this formatting here. And actually, I'm just going to apply formatting for the 2 here. And then this will be the lead, the main resource, and this will be the other as resource 2 to 5. Let's wrap that up quite literally. So we're just going to put this, and this will be the total. So here I can do a sum here of those 4 cells here. So that will tell me that 𝗏𝗏𝐻 is working at 19 days as a lead and 15 as another resource. And here, just a matter of doing a sum as well. So I can do an auto sum as well. Let's not get carried away. Only those 2, please. And I add a dot here, not sure why. And then I do the total here. Okay, so at this point, if there is some discrepancies, like for instance here, the total of all these 297, and you come here, the total is 307, and the workload left. You need to check that if what's wrong in your spreadsheet. So maybe you can put the 2 numbers close by. They usually, so in this case, there's nothing wrong with the spreadsheet. The only thing is here I have not allocated any 1 to this. So do we want to alert users that there is something left here and there's no resource here? That is possible. We could say you have a resource and a count using the same count that we have here and the same count if here. We could do this, but I'm not going to do it straight away because I think there's enough also safeguard, and you would assume that there's a resource here that is obviously missing. So if you put it here, even at 10%, that gives you 307 here, and here that should give you the same total here, 307. So it might be a better way just to put your number here and just compare. But this is it. So this is what we have done. We have all the totals, and we are ready to do some charts now. So now we'll worry later about making them pretty, but actually I'm going to try and put one non-allocated. I'm just going to put those 2 unallocated, so we have something in here, in this one as well. You just select the resources here, you press Control, and I'm just going to select everything here, press Control key, and just select all these, not this, just the 2 columns here, lead and the other. And I'm just going to try and find a chart. So you're going to recommend a chart. It doesn't really work. This is not really what I want. This one could work better. Let's just take it. OK, press OK. And this will be our starting point. Now, something that you can do is, if you feel that's going to be too squishy, all those names here, what you can do is you can input here initials, for instance, something shorter. And it's usually something that you can calculate automatically with a formula. I've done it in the past, but it doesn't work with every name, and you want to be able to let users choose the initials. So if you do here JW, if you do AM here, so this is where you're hoping that Excel can take over and do it all for you, at least a starting point. Now it doesn't want me to do it here. So BC, you do it all the way, empty. And A. So here, when you go back here, instead of taking the full name, then you can take this. I think they will look better on our dashboard. So I'm just going to copy this. And I'm just going to put it here. So obviously there's some work to be done. What I like to do is I like to put it see-through, format, shape fill, see-through. I like to remove those. I just put everything in white. So Excel doesn't default the chart text in white. So here you can put in white as well. You right click on the format data series and you try to reduce the gap width. I think for me I prefer sometimes in these instances when there's not that many resources it might not be worthwhile. 150, put it here. So what else? I want to have to stay with the blue. So let's say, for instance, here if I put a lighter blue to make them understand, here slightly lighter blue, that the lead here is a paler blue, lead is a paler blue, and then as a other resource then you have a darker blue maybe, still here this way, up for debate. Okay, so this is good. I just need to have a bit of a chart here. Just gonna say this is the current workload. Workload meaning, as usual, what is left per person. And then, yeah, so if you think this is a bit too in your face, you just can delete this. Sorry, put it smaller, bold, optional. I'm noticing this video is quite long and I don't want to lose your interest too much. So those charts here, you can do them yourself. They are pretty straightforward. They're very similar to the one I've had in my other video. So if you're not sure how to make them, please check my other video. So this is the completed vs outstanding total. So we've already calculated the outstanding, and we know how much we had at the beginning. The task completion, so this 378, it's here, so that's also a donut chart, quite easy. And the resource occupied with no task. So here just a matter of calculating the amount of resource that have 0 in their workload. So it's just a count if on this, and who has 0, please leave your hand. Then that's pretty much it. So here should be straightforward. The same color scheme, the orange color scheme, and here the gold color scheme. The additions that I have is here I'm selecting allow the users to select a resource, so which is exactly the same process as selecting a resource here. The only difference is I am accepting the top one here as a value, and when there is a top one selected, I just don't do anything here. But for when a resource is selected, I just do, let's just check with one, manage rules. When the value of the cell is equal to this, so I'm just showing it with orange. It is as simple as that. So this way that shows me all the values here that have this. Mark Thomas here. All tasks, the same. By default, I have all tasks, so we show all tasks. And if I want to select only the active tasks, I have a conditional formatting that applies across the board. So here I'm selecting absolutely everything. But I have two conditions here. The one is the task is completed, and two, that I have this cell here is showing that I only want to show the active tasks. And when those two conditions are met, I'm graying everything out, including the renowned completion flag here. So this is done, this is the date, today's date, and this is easy. This is just concatenating the tasks, and here completed and the likes. So this is it, that you have it all in your hands to do a beautiful dashboard. Let me know how you go, and I hope this was useful, and I see you in my next video.